All right, guys. This is going to be episode 2 of Berry Share, and we are going to be talking about a really important, really impactful topic that's in the series on communication, and it's going to be on active listening. Last week, we were talking about the why behind communication, and Nicole and I were discussing about how important, why is communication so important? And it's because communication really is the relationship. And we talked about how the goal of communication is ultimately a heart-to-heart connection with the people that you are communicating with. The goal is intimacy. You remember us talking about that. It's intimacy, which is being fully known and also fully accepted. And I'm excited about being fully known and fully accepted with my bride. Is she going to come and join us here? Say what's up to everybody, babe.
Hey! We are so excited to be here.
So active listening. So give us a couple of bullet points about what we're actually going to be talking about, so we can kind of whet the appetite.
Yeah, I mean the things that have been going on in our world really have just been rocking us to the core. And you know, as I've been thinking about it and praying about it and crying about it and just saying, like, Lord, what can I do to do my part to help our country come back into reconciliation, to help our world reconcile. And you know, the thing that I keep coming back to is, like, I have to be a better listener.
That's right.
I have to be a better listener to God. I have to be a better listener to you. I have to be a better listener to the people who I know. I have to be a better listener to people that I don't know, that aren't like me, that have a different life story, that have a different background. And so we just thought, you know, this week would be a great week to bring up just how to become a better listener. I think if everyone could take one nugget from this and just say, I'm going to apply it to my life, then yes, we are all taking those steps towards unity, towards reconciliation, towards loving the way Jesus did. So tonight we're going to be talking about active listening. We're going to be telling you the benefits of active listening, some of the barriers to active listening, and really, what's the other thing we're going to be talking about?
Best practices.
The best practices. I know I kept you around for some reason. But the best practices for active listening. So we would love for you to stay on with us. We are going to be probably going about 30 minutes or so, and just really want to give you guys some bullet points, some practical, this is how you do it. We want to give you the how to your why. Last week we talked about why communication is so important, and you were just saying earlier how communication just builds intimacy. Into me, see. And the way that you see into me is by communicating with me, by speaking with me, by listening to me, and vice versa. So that was the why last week. If you didn't already see that, you can go onto our Facebook page or our YouTube page and check out last week's episode 1, the why of communication. So babe, what are we going to talk about?
Well, first we want to talk about the benefits, because you've got to, you know, every time that we're going to be talking about things, especially dealing with relationships, you know, we have some ingrained patterns, and we're going to be telling you something, hopefully teaching you something you haven't ever heard before, that will actually require some change. And there's no way that we're going to be able to change, we're going to be motivated to change, unless we see the reason as to why we should change.
Right.
And so we really need to understand the benefits of active listening. So why don't you just name off some of those that we were discussing earlier?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I guess I would just ask you guys a question, everyone who's watching, and just close your eyes for a second and just kind of picture this in your mind. I would like for you to picture the last time that you felt truly heard and understood. Just get that conversation into your mind. Get that person into your mind. When was the last time you felt heard and understood? And if you got that into your head now, and I hope that you do, I hope that you've had at least one experience where you felt heard and understood, I want you to think about how that made you feel. You know, I know for me, Brandon, we're far from perfect at active listening, and you know, that's just something that we're always going to continue working on. But I really feel like you're a great listener, and you make me feel so respected and so loved and accepted. And so when I feel loved and accepted and respected, I feel honored. Like, you really honor me by loving me, by listening to me. And so, and conversely, if we don't feel that way, we feel disrespected. We feel dishonored.
That's right.
And so the real benefit here, whether you're in a relationship with a significant other, with your children, with a coworker, with a client, we want people to feel honored. Yeah. We want people to feel their worth, that they are worthy of being listened to. They're worthy of our respect, our attention. They're worthy of our acceptance of what they're just not that we have to always agree with what they're saying, but we're accepting the words that they're speaking into our minds and into our hearts. And so that's a major benefit. It's just that it creates more honor, and especially when you're in a relationship like a marriage or with parenting, it creates more intimacy. It creates that heart-to-heart connection that we were talking about before. And so that's the major one. But but another one, is that when I'm speaking with you and you're listening to me and you're really hearing me, not only do you get to know me more because of the words that are coming out of my mouth and the way that you're responding to them, but I get to know myself more.
That's right.
Because as I'm hearing myself, and I'm hearing, get this, when someone's watching you, when someone's actively listening to you and you're speaking, you don't have to have your brain on saying, this person doesn't want to know what I have to say. You're not dealing with that when someone's actively listening. And so instead of having to deal with all the distractions of really the enemy telling you you're not good enough, what is happening is you get to hear the words that are coming out of your mouth. And the words that come out of your mouth are really what Luke said. What Luke said, what Jesus said in Luke, is that what comes out of your mouth is really what's in your heart.
That's right.
And so if I get to hear myself speaking, and you are giving me your full attention, you are giving me a gift to know myself more intimately.
That's right.
And that is, it's just something that you can't put a price on.
That's right. Just a little nugget, just out the gate, is just, I think it'd be good for us to think about listening in layers. And, when it's time and we just need to communicate and be like, hey, babe, what do you got on the grocery list?
Right.
It's like a get her done conversation.
Get her done.
There's, it's more you're focusing on the actual words, the content of what's being said. But a little bit deeper, if you're actually having more of a, hey, honey, I want to tell you about this business idea that I've got, and it's kind of like this dream, and I don't know if it's a good idea yet or not, and it's just, and it's like I want to entrust her with that, and so she can listen and just listen to the words that I'm saying, and just be like, that makes sense. But she's also, you can listen, on a heart level.
You're right.
And so I think there's like surface level listening that's got the actual words that I'm saying, and then there's like heart level listening where you're listening to my feelings. You're listening to where it really comes from, and you're responding. And that's why I think face-to-face communication is so important.
So important.
And we'll talk about the hierarchy of communication, and we'll expound on that in another episode. But face-to-face communication, this right here.
This is as good as it
gets.
This
is as good as it gets. Why? Because 55% of communication is body language.
Right.
And 35% is tone, and the rest, 15%, is the actual words that you say. But I think it's more than that. It's like when you're with somebody, and that's why I think face-to-face is so much even better than Skype, is because when you're with somebody, you're not just seeing their body language,
right,
but I'm actually feeling you.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, there's an even deeper level. There's surface level active listening, there's heart level active listening, but then there is spirit level active listening, and that goes to an even deeper place. And if you've never experienced this, then this may sound woo woo, but it's real. Yeah. And so if I'm really listening and I'm holding my wife's words and her story well, then when she's talking, I'm not just listening to the words that she's saying and listening to what her heart and her emotions are saying, but I'm actually saying, God, what are you saying about Nicole Christine Berry?
That's right.
And what would you have me say from the Holy Spirit as a response to this, if anything? And that's that's a spirit level. Listen, I just want to challenge everybody. If you've never even thought about that, that it's real, and we want to encourage everybody, especially now. If it's shallow into the pool conversations, we need to what's the grocery list.
Right.
We want to be kind in those, but when you're having a face-to-face, like heart-to-heart conversation, then we need some tools to be able to really connect. And so, but the thing is that there are some barriers that are actually that are real in our lives, that are pretty typical in our culture right now.
Yeah.
That would keep us from really having some good active listening. And so the first one that we want to talk about is multitasking.
Multitasking. It's funny because multitasking is something that's touted as like this big, I'm a great multitasker, look at me, look at all these different things I can do. And, we have a 21-year-old who lives in our home, and she is always doing like 20 things at one time. She's folding laundry and watching a Netflix thing, and she's Snapchatting, and she's, and it's just like,
I don't get it.
and there is something about, I think women especially think that we're able to multitask, and our brains, I read a book one time that was called Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghetti.
Yeah, good.
And it was talking about how men like to just kind of focus on one square at a time, but women, their lives are kind of just all jumbled together like a big plate of spaghetti, everything's touching. But we take that to saying, oh, we're really good at multitasking and guys aren't. The truth of the matter is that brain science has shown us that there is absolutely and actually no such thing as multitasking. There is no way that our brains can actually give the same amount of attention to two different things. And so what we think as a multitasking is truly giving spurts and bursts of energy and attention to many things in all at once. And so
so it's like giving a little bit of attention here, and then you switch, and you give a little bit of attention here, and then you switch back, and you give a little bit of attention here. But the going back and forth, you're losing a lot of the power.
You're losing a lot of the power. And so when I'm cooking, I'm not as good of a parent when I'm cooking. I can't multitask, and really when I've got chicken frying in that frying pan, that is not the time for me to be at my best parenting. That is not the time for me. But we talk about that. We say, oh, I'm a great multitasker, and so we think it's okay. I'm going to pull down this again. We think it's okay for us to be sitting here looking at each other, and then me to look down at my phone because I just got a text message, and then go back to the conversation. And I'm telling you this, I am bad at this. Can I just admit, I am really, really working on this, because Brandon has seriously told me, babe, it hurts my feelings when you look at your phone and I'm trying to talk to you. And I've got to hear that in him and say, hey, you're telling me how I can love you better, and that is to put your phone down. And so when we're in these conversations, and like Brandon said, there's these different levels of conversation. Most of our time is not spent treading water in the deep ends of the pool. And what I'm saying there is most of our conversations are not this type of conversation where you have to look each other in the eye and touch. So don't get overwhelmed in that. But and in fact, when you're in a pool, when you're hanging out in a pool, a lot of times if you're in the pool, you're in the shallow end where your feet can touch. And so I like to think of life and conversations like that, is that most of the time we're going to go and we're going to be a surfacey level, more just get her done kind of conversations. What did you pack for my lunch? You got to pick the kids up at this time. Soccer practice is at 6 o'clock. We've got life group tonight. Don't forget about, the laundry in the washing machine and let it mildew. Anybody else ever do that? Oh my gosh, front-load washers are killing me here. But that's a whole other story.
So we need to be kind in the shallow end of the pool, but really tonight is about equipping us with tools to be able to overcome the barriers so that when you do have some focus time, when it's date night, when you get the kids down and you have an opportunity to talk about something serious or something, you had a disagreement with your boss and it just kind of rose up in you, and maybe you overreacted to a friend and you had an argument and you don't know why you overreacted, and maybe it has something to do with your mom or your dad when you were a kid, and you want someone to talk to and to process with you about like if at that point and you're having that kind of a deep you want to be heard, you want somebody to hold your story well. If someone at that point is just like, yeah, okay, give me, you know what, I got to take this right now. Like you can forget. It's crushing. And so what's a way that we can, what's the answer to that? What is the antidote to this multitasking, this gravitas towards, like, you look at me, I can do 10 things, which really we're finding out, studies have shown it's not even real.
It's not even true.
So what can we do instead? What's the antidote?
Well, I think one thing that we've really been working on is that when Brandon, especially, because I'll just tell you this, like, in our relationship, I'm the shallow person and Brandon's the deep person. and any of you who know us know that's true, right? But not that I'm always shallow, but I just kind of like to keep things in the shallows, and I am more focused on things at the home and 4 small children and making sure a 21-year-old is taken care of and making sure everything's done. But when we're together and Brandon wants to talk about something important, it's not just this surfacey level stuff. If I'm on the computer, if I'm on the phone, if I'm hanging out with one of the kids or working on something in the house, you've gotten really good at being like, hey, babe, I need to talk to you about something. Is now a good time?
And I don't know where that cut off, but there was a notification on the cell phone that we're using to do this Facebook Live, and that just interrupted the flow of communication.
Yep.
And so
How apropos.
Exactly. I don't think we could have planned that
it was like
any
an
better.
illustrated sermon right there.
That's right. I mean, because when we do that, like, it interrupts it. It interrupts the flow. But I think that's great. You challenge. I don't know if they caught that or not, but Nicole was actually challenging everybody out there. Hey, one of the ways to cut out this barrier to intimacy, to active listening, is to minimize your notifications.
Yeah.
Do you have to be buzzed or notified every time somebody likes a photo on Instagram or has a Facebook post or you get an email? The most successful CEOs, they will check email once or twice a day. They schedule it, and they schedule it during an energy valley rather than an energy peak, because they save the energy peaks for the most important things that they do that day. And guys, we need to guard our hearts. We need to guard our times. We need to guard our relationships by minimizing the interruptions and the distractions in our day. I'll tell you this, and people made fun of me, but I was the last person that I knew to get a cell phone.
I made fun of you.
Yeah, she made fun of me. But I'll tell you this, and people will still make fun of me because sometimes I'll take 24 to 48 hours to return a phone call. Sometimes it'll take me a while. I'm not an immediate texter. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you the reason why I do that is because my culture is this: if I'm with you, like, I'm with you.
Yeah, you are. You're really good at it.
I don't have any notifications on my phone. It doesn't vibrate for any. It only vibrates for a phone call, and I only answer a phone call if I'm not in a conversation with somebody else, unless it's my bride and she calls twice, because that's kind of an emergency, right? But y'all, that's my policy. Why? Because I so value this.
Right.
And if I'm with you, like, I want you to know that you are my priority.
And that's one of the things that people always talk about when they talk to me about you, is that you make people feel special. And so that's probably one of the ways that you do that. You honor them with your time and your attention.
So let's talk about the specifics of active listening. You know, if we're gonna, you know, if you're gonna be an active listener to me, what are some of the dynamics of that?
Yeah. Well, the interrupting thing is one thing, and I would say this about that: when you are in a relationship with somebody, of course, probably everybody has seen the movie Frozen. You know, and Anna and Hans, they meet each other and they sing this sweet song about how they just fell in love and they just knew each other, and they're like, I never knew someone who finishes my, and then the other one says, sandwiches. And I just think that was so perfect, because the longer you get to know each other, the more likely you think you know what the other person's going to say.
That's right.
And so I do this all the time. I'm guilty of this, and that Brandon will be talking, and especially when someone chooses their words carefully, and so maybe they're slower at speaking or getting their point across. Someone like me, I just like to kind of get to the point, and so you'll be kind of talking and drawing it out, and I'll just finish the sentence for you, and I'll interrupt you by finishing your sentence with something wrong.
It won't be where I was going to go.
And you'll be like, no, that's not it.
Yeah.
And I'll do it again and again. And so the longer you get to know someone, or the longer you've known someone, the more likely you are to try to interrupt. And so just one thing that I'm going to start doing, and maybe, hey, you guys might want to do this too, is I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to do an interruption challenge.
Come on, somebody.
All right? And so this week, I am going to count how many times I interrupt you.
Okay.
And every time that I interrupt you after this video,
okay,
I'm going to put $1 into a jar, and at the end of the week, I'm going to give all that money, and I will post how many dollars I had to put in there. I'm going to give all that money to a church or a charity, maybe a missionary, somebody, a nonprofit, something that's going to go to good. I'm not sure exactly what yet, but I'm pledging that.
Well, let's go ahead. Hey, will you take the interruption challenge? Will you do the same thing? And every time that you catch yourself and you interrupted somebody, then you're going to keep track of it. It's an honor system totally, and you put $1 in a jar, and on Sunday or whenever you're going to contribute to your church or your charity or whatever organization, like, let's do that, and then let's tell on ourselves, and let's just be a community that's saying, hey, we're going to get better at this, of not interrupting. And I'll say, there's sometimes this is an opportunity to go deeper in our hearts, because sometimes we interrupt because we may be valuing what we want to do next more than what that other person has to say, and so we get impatient, and so we may interrupt because we just think what we have to say is better than what they have to say.
Yeah.
And so
pride.
It might just be pride.
Yeah.
And I'll say I've been guilty of that. Of just interrupting somebody just because I felt like they were taking too long to say what they were going to say, and I felt like my stuff was better. And that's just it's ick.
Yeah.
But also we've spoken to some folks that even had some fierce conversations with some folks that are just kind of tend to interrupt, and we've just said, what do you think it is? And I know one person in particular gave us the feedback that when they were a child, they were never. It was always don't speak until spoken to, and they were never given a place to where their thoughts and words were valued. Mm-hmm. And so when they became an adult, they were just like, well, now I can speak. And so then they just interrupted.
They're always speaking.
And it's out of, but it was, where was it?
Out of a hurt.
It's out of a hurt. It was out of a wound. And and I think just being cognizant of that, I think that for that person to have realized that's deep. Mm-hmm. And I think that's they're on the way to a different reality, to healing in that area, and to better active listening for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
What else?
So interrupting, talking. When you're in a conversation like this with somebody, and let's say Brandon says, hey, I want to talk with you about something. If I'm the listener in that situation, and it may be something that he just deep in his heart, it might be something that maybe we need to deal with conflict. But this is something that he's come to me about and saying, I want to talk to you about something. I need to, as the listener, maybe go by a 70-30 rule. And that is, I'm going to listen 70% of the time, and I'm only going to talk 30% of the time. And so if I'm going to allow you to speak 70% of the time, then that's going to give you enough space to be able to say what you need to say. And because a lot of times, let's say we're speaking about a subject that I'm, pretty well versed in. Well, instead of trying to feel like I need to exert my experience and my aptitude in this, if I could just listen to what you have to say, I might still even learn more. So in that situation, try.
Is it on?
It's on.
All right.
Oh my word!
Wow.
People.
So
I'm so serious right now.
So anyway,
I'm just gonna let you finish
that. Guys, at the end of the day, there's a scripture that says this: where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And whenever we practice active listening, whenever we honor the person with our body language, with our nodding of our head, with our eye contact, with what we've said to them, and I do this all the time, is I'll have my cell phone and I will tell somebody before I sit down. I'll cut my notifications off, and I'll say, listen, I'm not going to answer this unless it buzzes twice, and it might be my wife, okay? But you have my full undivided attention. Do you mind if I take notes? And then I will repeat back to them some phrases that they said. And guys, if when I do that for somebody, when I do that for Nicole, she feels loved. She feels treasured. And that's what I really just wanted to put out, is that where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And a lot of times, we treasure things in our lives that are not our highest priorities. And at the end of the day, that's really our mission. That's why we're doing this. That's why we're trying to persevere through 2 battery dies or whatever happened and interrupted the flow. But we want to inspire passion for your priorities, so that you live from the inside out according to what you value the most, and that your life is not consumed by distractions and things that are not really important. I hope a little bit of these nuggets that may help you with some active listening, and I hope we can connect with you next week, Thursday, 9 p.m. with not as many technical difficulties. Thanks for sticking in there for those that are seeing this. Love y'all. Peace.